D-Lo 404 Boxing. Shout out to the LDBC. Yeah, I just want to speak a little bit on Bud Crawford and the situation that he's in, as far as, having a hard time getting the fights that he's saying he wants. I see a lot of people, kind of, of the belief that, Bud is in a bad situation with Top Rank, and that Top Rank's holding him up from being able to be the star he wants to in the welterweight division or even in boxing. And I just want to give my take on that. First thing I want to say is, for one, first and foremost, it looks like Bud is happy with his situation. And by happy with his situation, I mean happy with the deal he got from Top Rank, happy with the arrangement that he's in with ESPN Plus, with the launching of the ESPN Plus app, and kind of being the premier fighter on that app. Happy with his monetary compensation. Happy that he was able to get a title shot in his first fight in the welterweight division. Which I want to say was his first fight on the app, but it very well could have been the Indongo fight for Undisputed, but I don't think so. I think the first fight was the fight with Jeff Horn, and then the next fight, of course, being the Jose Benavidez fight. But that said, there's a lot of criticism. I mean, we all know what Bob Arum is and what he's about. You know what I'm saying? He definitely is my favorite promoter. I mean, which I'm not big on promoters whatsoever, but I'm definitely, not in any way, shape, form, or fashion carrying the flag for Bob Arum Top Rank Promotion, saying that, that they're the premier promoter in boxing and so forth and so on. What I'm saying is that Bud seems to be happy in his situation. He's happy with putting on fights, at his home arena and Omaha, and bringing out big crowds and doing decent numbers at his fights. And, he's happy with his compensation, I imagine. I never hear him come out complaining about, that he feel like he's underpaid or he feels like he's getting robbed or whatever. So if that man is in the situation he's in and he's not complaining about it, who are we to complain about his compensation or complain about his deal and say that he messed himself over by signing that deal? The reality is that, all the heights that he's reached in boxing, he's reached them under Top Rank. So if you're saying the promoters held him up, the promoter was right there along with him for the ride to Undisputed at 140. The promoter was right there with him when he got that first title shot, that title shot in the very first fight at 147. And so with that said, I can see where Bud isn't displeased with his progress or his situation with Top Rank. And I respect that. I respect that because at the end of the day, he knows what kind of money he's bringing in. He knows the fights that they're putting him in and giving him the opportunities they put in front of him. And, he knows more about what's going on with the fights that aren't being able to be made than we do. Or he should know. And, there's this perception that, he's just, some guy that just, like, I'm just going to fight and I'll let my other people handle this, that, and the other. But we can't just assume that he doesn't have, checks and balances in place to make sure that his best interest is being taken care of by everyone that works for him, including his promoter. So, I think a lot of the criticism for him is unmerited, and I think, there are those who find it, it's easy to say, well, Bud's promoter is the reason that the Spence fight isn't being made, when in reality, we've heard the fighters themselves or representatives of the fighters themselves saying that, right now, they're not trying to make that fight. They're letting it be known they both want the fight, but they both also have other things that they're wanting to do. Bud's side has seemed more eager to make the fight, but that said, I think, like I said, I think he's happy with the situation he's in, and I think as long as that fight is on the horizon in the not so distant future, he's okay. But I think he may be concerned that if the fight doesn't happen soon, it may never happen, because once Errol Spence gets more traction, wins this, if he wins the fight against Mikey, it's on pay-per-view. It's perceived that it's going to do really good numbers, good turnout at the stadium, and then that puts him even more in the driver's seat. So, there may be more motivation for Terrence Crawford to go ahead and get the fight before he goes to the fight with Errol. And just say if Errol picks up those other 2 belts, comes to that fight with 3 belts, pay-per-view star, excuse me, and having in his last several fights put some really good names on his resume, coming to the negotiating table with Terrence Crawford, that's going to make it that much harder for Crawford to get the deal he wants to get on that fight. But if at the end of the day he's trying to get the fight, I think the fight is makeable. I don't know per se that Bob Arum is in the way. We just know Bob Arum has a track record of saying, if you want to fight, one of my fighters, sign with Top Rank, or here's the contract. If you win, I got options on your next 2 fights, or whatever, whatever the case may be. We've seen that type of practice from Bob Arum. But I think the criticism for Crawford in saying that he was a dummy for re-signing with Top Rank, he should have went to PBC, so forth and so on, I think that's unmerited. I think that if Bud didn't get a chance to talk to PBC, then PBC may very well not have reached out to him and said, hey, we know you're a free agent right now, this is what we can do for you. And the reality is that PBC is not a promotional outfit anyway. So even with that said, Arum isn't, Arum is just his promoter. Top Rank is just a promoter. So there still was opportunities, or even to this day, if he feels like, he needs the help, who's to say he can't sign with PBC right now, even if he's with Top Rank? Some of those PBC fighters actually are tied to promoters. So I just feel like I like what PBC does for fighters. Don't get me wrong. I like what they seem to stand for. I like that they put these fighters in a good position. The fighters seem to make more money with them, so forth and so on. I like all that. I'm a fan of that proponent, of the whole thing. But what I have to say about that is everyone can't go to PBC, and everyone doesn't have a desire to do what everyone else is doing. Not all fighters or not all people want to do what everyone else is doing, even if that model seems to be working. It's like, nah, I just want to do my own thing. You know what I'm saying? I want to carve out my own lane. So it's hard for me to criticize a guy if Bud isn't jumping up and down, pouting and whining about he feels like he's getting screwed, yet he he read up with Top Rank. Then it's hard for me to sit there and be critical of the guy, because he seems, sorry about that, drop my phone, he seems to be happy with his situation. And there's always going to be fights that we want to see fighters in that for some reason or another there seems to be a roadblock preventing the fight. But I don't think everyone should be signed to the same stable to be able to get the fights they want to get. I mean, that's no different than like I said, it's no different than what Bob Arum used to do. With having these guys that wanted to fight Pacquiao basically sign some agreement to where, because they got the fight, he got options on them for the next fight or 2. And sometimes whether they win or lose, it was just kind of a condition of, hey, we going to get this fight and you're going to make way more money than you ever made. And this is what it's going to take to get this fight done. And I feel like that practice has gotten old. Fighters and their managers have gotten hip to it, and they find out that that's not a situation where they're actually winning in that situation, so they're staying away from it. But with that said, like I just said, I'm all for a guy trying to do his own thing and feeling like, I don't have to go do that to get these fights. These fights are here to be made. I mean, we've seen this nonsense with the networks before, where you had a guy, guys fighting exclusively on HBO and guys fighting exclusively on Showtime, and we let that be the excuse for why we as the fans don't get to see the fights we want to see. It's basically that now that it's flopped from, or flipped from being the networks that's holding up a lot of fights to being, oh well, yeah, he's with this promoter, they're not gonna fight, or he's with that promoter, they're not gonna fight. And that's nonsense. That's a cop out. The reality is these guys want to fight. They need to let it be known to whoever makes the decision and puts them in position to get fights that, hey, I want this fight and I want it next, and I'm not fighting anybody else until I get this fight. And basically put their promoters in a situation, or their management, or whoever is guiding their career in a situation where it's like, okay, I can't let this guy sit on the shelf 2-3 years of his boxing life, or maybe for some guys of their prime, because I'm in disagreement with who they want to fight. Because at the end of the day, the promoters aren't gonna get in the ring and fight anyone. The managers aren't, or the advisors aren't. It's up to the fighters to get in there and take care of their business. And the business is boxing. So without boxing, there is no business. If they're not putting on fight cards, no one has any interest in what's going on with a promoter. No one's gonna come and just pay money to see a promoter sit down and talk about what he would do if he had fighters. So, we have to be realistic about that, and not just fall into this belief that, hey, the promoter's holding up the fight, and until he leaves that promoter, the fight can't happen. Or until this guy, even with networks, or until this guy leaves his network, the fights can't happen. Networks and promoters have worked together for years and years to bring the fights that they wanted. And the reality is that they can do the same thing for the fights that we as fans want to see, and bring together the fights that their fighters want to participate in. But that whole Cold War nonsense is just an excuse not to make the fights that the parties involved really don't want to make. But it's ideal to basically manipulate the situation and convince the fans that, hey, we're trying to make this fight, but for reasons XYZ, we can't make the fight right now. So you guys just be patient and keep buying or tuning in to our fights that are taking place in the interim. Help making us as much money as possible, and one day we may eventually bring you the fight that we promised you years ago. And that's the situation as I see it. I'm not going to sit there and just stand on one side of it and say, hey, this is what it is, and it's this guy and it's that guy, and that we're not in a position as fans to demand it. We just need to be happy and sit back and wait. I'm not of that belief. I think our viewership has power. Our dollars at the paper, when it comes to pay-per-view or coming to the fights, all of that stuff has power, and we can bring about some change to get the fights we really want to make. Today we live in an era of social media where you can get out there and voice your opinion. Even like what I'm doing right now, making this video, for as far as it can go, I'm voicing my opinion about a topic. And it's not just me talking to one of my buddies, and no one else hears it. So, regardless of all of that, you have to, realize that as the consumer, we have a right to demand what we want to see, what we want to pay for. So, that's where I stand on it. Like I said, I'm not of the belief that you can just put it all on the promoter, or blame the promoter that the fight's not happening, or blame one fighter or two fighters, or the other fighters' management or promotional company or whatever the case is, or even just blame it on both fighters themselves. There's always enough blame to go around, and there's always enough culprits involved into why fights aren't happening. It's just like it takes more than just two fighters to make a fight happen. But that's all I'm going to say on the subject. I just think a lot of this criticism of Bud Crawford is unmerited. And I think, some people just feel a certain way about certain topics, and they take that and they run with it, and they're going to continue to do that, until they get what they want. But that doesn't mean that it's accurate or that that's the actual case. That's all I'm going to say on it. Shout out to the LDBC, D-Lo 404 Boxing. I'm out. Peace.